Hari, Zetniz, Hagwethlas, Hunasti Wasatil, Sels Waitus Hahatni, Klazen within and Ingis Vasilio Disto, Klazen, or Slately, Snachalia Noye Katnasya. So, hello, welcome, good afternoon. I'm a carrier person from Clasden, and I'm a guest here on Lately Today. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Lately Today, or I'm on the lands of the Lately Today people. And so is this festival. And so this is the Ut'loo, Noye, Khunni Weaving Word Celebration Festival Sampler. And our guest today is Garry Gottfriedson. He's from Kamloops, and he is strongly rooted in his
very good
cultural teachings. He holds a Master of Arts Education degree from Simon Fraser University. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
It's up to you.
In 1987, the Naropa Institute of Boulder, Colorado awarded a creative writing scholarship to Gottfriedson for the Master of Fine Arts Creative Writing. There he studied under Allen Ginsberg, Marianne Faithfull, and others. Gottfriedson has 10 published books, and he has read from his work across Canada, the United States, South America, New Zealand, Europe, and Asia. Gottfriedson's work is unapologetically unveils the truth of Canada's treatment of First Nations. His work has been anthologized and published nationally and internationally, and currently he works at Thompson River University. Louise Halfe, Sky Dancer, was raised on Saddle Lake Reserve and attended Blue Quills Residential School. Louise is married, has 2 adult children and 3 grandsons. She graduated with a Bachelor of Social Work from the University of Regina. She also completed 2 years of addiction counselor training at St. Albert's Noye Institute, where she also facilitated the program. She serves as Saskatchewan's Poet Laureate for 2 years and has traveled extensively for her poetics and to present at numerous conferences. Her books include Bears, Bones, and Feathers, Blue Marrow, The Crooked Good, Burning in the Midnight Dream, and Soheita, and Awasi, and Dishevel. She has received numerous accolades and awards, including honorary doctorate from Wilfrid Laurier University, the University of Saskatchewan, Mount Royal University. She currently serves as the National Parliamentary Library Poet Laureate. Louise also serves as an elder and knowledge keeper at the University of Saskatchewan and Saskatchewan's Health Authority. She actively participates in cultural and ceremonial activities relevant to her Plains Cree culture. So, Atsu and Atsian, take it away. How did you say that? Sia, and what was the other word that they used? They had on here.
Well, Nechatax my quakalut na so happens chin. White co white tip. Slapper as postman says quakalut, little Louise. Then Haha as Louise. As Cook's jam honachum ho white to comipalanet at Collins Yana Chickay. So first I would like to acknowledge that I'm so happy to be able to sit with Louise, someone that I deeply respect and honor. And also I would really like to thank the organizers and the people who brought this event together, it's always so good to be a part of this festival, and that we get to talk over what I said is on the air. But I guess that's, I don't know how else to say it. Like this internet stuff, we have to make up a
Zoom,
word.
Zoom.
Zoom, yeah.
Zoom, Zoom.
Zoom, Zoom. That's a good way to say it. So it's really good. It's so good to be able to sit here. It's been a while since I had a chance to really sit with Louise and you guys up there in PG. So it's really good. And then I'm gonna zoom zoom, Louise. Yeah.
Okay. Kinaskop na ni sa kakio petagute ano ta Zoom, Zoom. Ego mina epic squat the cook. Kakio nuagumaga nakpugui teo maski he atsik. Nina ay nina skumal ke petagute tsik kamina Mich no su Elder 013 e siga asot. That's atoya. Kinaskum tene taguste bendo toya. Ego mina miasa de pepix kengis tagari e bakakio ke ka pewiti taso te gusta hinaskumal. I give you all great thanks for arriving to listen to Gary and I today. It's such a pleasure to be here, and my greetings to our elder Joan here. It's wonderful to see another old lady like me. And I consider you all my relatives because that's how we say it in Creek. We are related to each other all over the place. So it's a pleasure to be here. Okay, let's zoom, Gary.
Okay. Shall I charge to the east into the storm?
Yeah.
Into the snowstorm over there? Oh yeah. You know, I grew up over there. Well, I lived over there for a little while, you know, Louise, in Atakaku, because I have two sisters married out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, you know, I used to be able to speak Cree, but I understood you when you were speaking Cree, you know, or quite a bit of it anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's so good. One of the things I really miss a lot was like the sense of humor that, you know, the Cree people have, and especially, oh my goodness, when I came back over here, I said, oh, you know, the Cree women, they talk really dirty, you know. Beatic. But I really missed that, you know, that time that I was out there. And last summer I went out there to visit my friend, you know, Arini. And so it was so good to be back out in the prairies again. And, you know, and then I went visiting people out there in Atakaku, but then I went over to Chedick Lake. Yeah, they had a Sundance going on over there, so I went over there for the Sundance, and I was sitting real close to, you know, the entrance of the, you know, the lodge, and I was just sitting there, and it was kind of raining, and this guy comes along. I was just sitting there talking to this young man. This guy comes along and he pokes me, and I looked up at him and he says, "Those old men want you to go sit over there." I said, "What?" I get up and I walked over there and they were talking away in Cree, but their Cree was too advanced for me. I didn't understand them. I said, "Oh, that way. Me asin." You didn't understand me, he said. So he wanted to know where I was from, and I told him, "Oh, well, I'm from British Columbia." I said, "I just came over to visit, you know, friends out this way. I hadn't been in Saskatchewan for a long time, like maybe 20 years or more. So it was so nice to go out there again and see people. And too bad I missed you."
Yeah, no kidding. You know, years ago, and I can't remember that community, we went with our elder in one of the communities. He was introducing the Vision Quest in that community, and for the life of me, that community escapes me. But we all fasted there to help them along with their journey and how to acquire those skills, and it was really beautiful. It was alongside a lake. And you know what? When you're going without food and water for 4 days and 4 nights and the water's right there, oh boy, that's hard. That's really testing. I really wanted to go and have a bath.
Oh, yeah. Have a
Yeah,
drink. Have
yeah,
a drink too.
yeah, yeah,
And, there's some
yeah.
beautiful places, you know. I think every bit of the land has such uh, beauty to it.
Oh, sure, yes, yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
I remember like driving when I left my friend Narini and I went up to Atakakup and over to Chedik Lake, and I was driving in the hills and stuff, and I was thinking, how big is the sky?
Mm-hmm.
How clear it was, and I really enjoyed it. And I stopped. I pulled over on the way back, and it was in the middle of the night, and I was driving back to Saskatoon. And what the heck is that place called between Shell Lake and Saskatoon? What's that
There's
called?
Mr. Wasses and Duck Lake, and
It's just past Mr. Wass's
mm-hmm,
before you get to the highway.
mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh my goodness, it was beautiful. And all of a sudden, the coyotes start howling all over, and I stayed. I was out there all by myself in the middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so clear, and the stars, like it's different. I can see the stars and everything from my, because I live in the mountains and I
Yeah.
live away from the city. But I thought, whoa, this is magical. It was beautiful to be out there. I don't even know what we're supposed to be talking about, do you?
Well, I don't know. They said play.
Play! Oh,
So,
Mataito!
so this is a tea and Bannock. So we always have tea and Bannock around a table.
Oh,
And you know how we sit around a table, a coffee table or a kitchen table, and we just start telling stories and sharing experiences with, with our friends, our family, our kids,
mm,
our grandkids. And Rhonda shared a little piece with before about this. If you want to listen to that, and maybe it would set a stage.
oh yeah, go for it. Or
Okay.
I don't know, maybe Louise has something to say too.
Well, actually, I was going to expand on what you were saying about the land. One of the things that we've been doing, my husband and I, for the last 4 years, is we've joined a group of walkers, and we cover between 70 to 115 miles for the week.
Mm,
And so we've seen a lot of this province. And if you want to Google this, the Mystery Rocks in Cypress Hills, it's a really beautiful place. Like, people think Saskatchewan just flat. That's not true. If maybe the central part is a little bit flat, but you need to know the secrets of the province. And the Cypress Hills is just incredibly beautiful. There was a massacre that happened there many, many years ago, before our lifetime. And the other place is the Old Wives Lake, where the old ladies gave up their life to save their tribe and the children because they were being attacked. And the grasslands are incredibly beautiful. So I've been really active, like my mushum and my father and my mother and my brothers were all long distance walkers. And so I've inherited that love of walking. So this July, we're going to go and hike the West Coast Trail. I've got to carry about 30 pounds on my back for 7 days and climbing 70 ladders. So I've been really busy weightlifting so I can get into shape for that. My husband, I've been weightlifting for about 3 years. We get up early in the morning and just do it. So, and I really, really encourage our people to get healthy mentally and physically and spiritually, because our old people used to do all that stuff without even thinking about it. They would walk for miles and miles with a lot of, carrying their stuff and their babies. And we need to start emulating and encouraging our people to do that. Because I'm 69 in a month, and I can outwalk easily a 30-year-old. I just love it so much. So in Saskatchewan, I would love to walk across Canada and camp and pitch my tent. And we've driven across many, many times, but it's a different experience to walk, because your body takes a different rhythm and you get spiritually connected to the land, and you have beautiful dreams. Like, I was gifted with all kinds of dreams on these walks, and it's just fantastic. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add, because I thought, Saskatchewan is a hidden jewel.
Yeah.
But like many provinces, there's a lot of racism here as well. So we can't escape that. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me, where is a safe place in this country? And I looked at her and said, are you serious? You've got to be kidding. There is no safe place in this country for, to escape racism. It's in our face. That's all it is. We just have to learn to deal with it. And our jobs as poets is we do a lot of educational work, not only among our own, but right across the board. And with your travels, I have traveled, Gary, like as much as you have, internationally.
Yeah.
And I've hit some of those places that you mentioned, and I'm educating all the time, and I'm learning from those other cultures as well and bringing it back to this country. So it's so important that we develop a worldview. Yeah.
I agree with that, Louise. I mean, that's one of the things, like, and because you speak Cree, I speak my language too. And those of us that do speak our language, the way that we can see the world and the way that we can connect to the world, and like, the same thing, there is something magical about the prairies. And, when I came back, and I was telling you, when I came back from close to where Miss DeWasses was, and then a few days later, I went to the river, and sometimes I like to take a little nap in the afternoon, and I laid down by the river, out, in Saskatoon there, but just a little bit to the south. I think east is where I was at. And when I laid down, I started to hear songs. And I, because I was kind of in that state of kind of half awake, half asleep just before you go to dream, or, and I was laying there, and it was a beautiful, the sun was really warm. And I was just laying there, and I thought, I'm going to have a little nap, just a little nap by the river. And then I heard singing, and it was beautiful song, but just a short snippet. And I thought, oh my goodness. The first thing I thought was, I forgot to tell, the people of this land that I'm a visitor, that I came here. And so I gave a little bit of my snuff. I said, here, I hope you will accept this, but I come here because we're supposed to do that from my cultures, like tell them when we go to another place, I come here in peace, and I bring you this gift, So that's what I did, and just like what you were saying, my dreams after that were so rich. Some of them were confusing, but what I thought about was, whoa, the land. We call the ancestors from the land there. We call that Chuhui Waidam. And I said, they saw me there. I'm sure they saw me there. And so they sang something for me. At least that's what I wanted to believe. I thought it was something that was really good. So I left them a little gift. And about the walking too, I'm very much along the same thinking as you. I go walking every day. I go walking up the mountains, and right now the snow is melting, so it's ice. So I have to be really careful when I'm walking on the hillsides. But I walk a lot too, and like you, this year I'm going to be 68. So and people say, how did you get like that? Like I said, because our people were made to move.
Yeah.
Our people were made to move all the time. We never sat idle. We never had TVs when I grew up. So we were always moving. And I think bringing that part of who we are is like reinitiating our young ones to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Each weekend, my grandchildren come up each weekend, so I don't make them, but I get them to walk with me, and they love it. First, they didn't like it. They wanted to play on the thing.
Yeah.
But now they look forward to our walks in the mountains. So we're rich. The land is rich.
It is. Yeah, my kids too. I used to walk with them a lot when they were young. Even when we lived in a city, I would find a place to go hiking with them. But speaking about the river, many years ago, we were living in northern Saskatchewan, and this is where I learned to write. I would escape into the woods with my paper and pen and my journal, and after my kids would go to school, and I would sit against this log and write in my journal beside a little creek that went by our house, and I would just talk to the nature and ask nature questions, and she would answer back to me.
Oh, nice.
And just before I left northern Saskatchewan to come and live closer to the city, the water asked me in a very, very deep and guttural voice. I was so startled by it. It asked me, "Dante Dute, where are you going?" And I said, "I don't know. You know better than I do." At the time, because I was just startled that this water would ask me that. And when I was in ceremonies with my elders, when I was traveling with them in Wisconsin, we went to the Medeguan ceremonies on Lake Superior. The pebbles were singing on the shoreline as they were rolling to the shore. They were singing. And I was just, So in the dreams, I don't know if you do this, but all the dreams that I have, I record them because they're teachers.
Oh, yeah.
But I also use those dreams and work them into my poetry. Yeah. So when I was in China and in Belize, in China, I actually dreamt that I was building this was in Italy. When I was in Italy, I dreamt I was building a sweat lodge in Rome. That was really very crazy. I thought, what, a sweat lodge in Rome? Where am I going to get my sleep? And in China, we said prayers to the temples because Creator has many faces. The God who 1,000 faces. Joseph Campbell writes about that. And before I went to Belize, I went on an expedition in Belize, and before I arrived there, I actually never even thought about this until I got there. I said, I had a prophetic dream of being there and swimming with cadavers.
Oh, my goodness sakes.
And we went to this cave where the water was coming, this cave, and the guide told us we had headlamps and we were going into this cave. I freaked out because he was taking us to this cave where human sacrifices had been made. That was my
Oh,
dream of the cadavers.
oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. But the other thing I wanted to say, there's no such thing as Indian time.
Hmm.
You know, that's a fabrication. Like our people were always on the move, like you said. They always were preparing for the next stage, like the winters. We had to prepare all summer long for our meat and our berries. And I remember watching my grandparents do that, and we participated in that, you know. So, yeah, we're rich, and we have to revive all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started to do that too. And I was telling the group yesterday too, is like, even like with our language and how I see my journey going now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I was in residential school, I didn't want to speak my language for a long time. And then at that time, I was still with my wife, and we were sitting there. And when we first had our grandchildren, and we were sitting there, and we were talking, and we were saying, "What is it that we can leave them that's worth anything?" And she said to me, "Our language." So I was lucky because she's from the same tribe as me,
Mm-hmm.
and her we both came from fluent families, but we hid our language. But
Mm-hmm.
but when we got together, you know, once in a while when we didn't want our kids to really understand anything, we spoke. But there's three dialects that we have. There's Northern dialect, then there's Western dialect, and then there's Eastern dialect. And what we do is we always follow our mother's dialect because my culture is from a matriarch system. So you always follow whatever your mother's clan is doing. So even though I was born in the Western dialect region, I spoke Eastern dialect. And my wife was from the North, so she spoke the Northern. But we could still, you know, speak and understand each other. And through the language, I thought that, and she says, well, we got to talk to our children. We got to talk to our grandchildren when we have them, and in our language. And you know, I didn't think, you know, either my kids or my grandchildren listened because they never spoke to us in our language until one day one of my granddaughters had a problem in school, and she faced discrimination from one of her, it was a science teacher, and she was trying to do a project on tanning hides and explain it to him. And she was trying to explain to him, this is how we look at science. I helped her with that, you know, project.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, that's not science. He said, traditions don't belong in modern science. So he failed her for that class. And she got really upset. So she refused to work anymore in that class. So they called a big meeting. There was the principal, they had the First Nation workers, they had the, you know, counselors, they had the teacher, the vice principal, and there was a whole team of them. And there was the two of us. And then her mom was away working because I had to take her I had to be with her in school because her mom was going to get on the phone and talk. So we get into the meeting and she says to me, Sla'a, that's how we say grandfather in my language. She says, Sla'a, Dauskas Kwakalutka na Samashchin. She says, I will not speak English in here. I said, okay, Mala, that's good. So they were asking her questions and stuff, and she spoke straight in Sawapanschin. And so they became very frustrated with her response because she refused to speak English. And I told her, I says, you are taking your power. You are showing who you are. And so they said, we want to end this meeting, but we want the mother to be involved in this. And I didn't translate. So my granddaughter, she dials on the phone and her mom's there. And my daughter, that's my daughter, she says she was getting like a little frustrated with my granddaughter. And my granddaughter says, I refuse to speak English to you guys because they said that my knowledge and my grandfather's knowledge was worth nothing, that it doesn't exist. And so I'm not going to participate anymore. And I will not speak English in this school as long as I'm in this school from now on. And that's when I realized that all the investment that I put into my grandchildren came alive. Up until that point, I didn't think my grandchildren would ever speak back, but she fluently spoke. And she took her power back and she showed who she was. And I thought, wow, that's what we need in this day and age. And she's one of the ones that, like, she just texted me last night and she said, when are we going out to the mountains? Because I like to take them out and I show them different foods and stuff like that. And I said, pretty soon, because the ground is thawing. She says, good. And she said, well, I'm going to try to get the real younger ones, my grandchildren, her cousins that are like 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds to come. She says, but they're so lazy. She says, all they want to do is lay on the couch and hit But what I found was that small glimmer of hope there, that our people are not going to perish, even if there's one good speaker, and how she understands the land, how she understands herself as a Sewapn woman, it just lifted me up so much, and in her travels, now she got with she's with a young man now, so they've been together for a couple of years, and so she's teaching him the language. But she's so impatient with him too. It's like you should know that word by now. How many times do I have to tell you that word? I tell you that word all the time, and what's wrong with you? You're lazy, she tells him. I had to remind her that she grew up hearing the languages, and this kid didn't. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But I think our languages are so beautiful and they tell so many stories about the beauty of the land and the beauty of our people. And that, above all things, I guess, equalizes the ugliness sometimes we have to face through racism and everything, because it really, that's like the coyote marker that tells us we know who we are. When you speak Cree, there's a different life that happens. When our host here spoke in her language, all of these different sounds that we have, the beauty of it all, and how we can relate back to millennium of sounds and connection. Sounds and connection. It's beautiful, I think. And I know, yeah.
You're so blessed to have had a partner that's of your same tribe, and that you spoke, the same language. My husband's white, and I've taught him a lot of Cree, and he's been involved in all the ceremonies throughout our marriage. And he's still learning, but we're not able to all have fluent conversations. But my grandsons are blonde and blue-eyed, and I've exposed them to the Korean, to some of the ceremonies, and they haven't seen a whole lot because they live in Ontario. But what impressed me was, and my daughter speaks actually better Cree than some people that I know that don't make an effort, But and my little grandson, he's got four nationalities. He's Mi'kmaq, he's Cree, he's Black, and he's white.
Oh my goodness sakes! What a combination, eh?
Yeah. So he speaks Cree here and there, and he mixes up with English, and it's really a lot of fun to listen to him.
Yeah.
But one of the things my grandson, one of my eldest grandson, he's in medical school now. He was walking through the park in Toronto, and he noticed some Native people having a ceremony in the park, and I think they were having a sit-in. So he went up to them, and of course, people get leery, I suppose, when a white person approaches us, right? And and they wanted to know what he was doing there, and he said, I'm Cree and white, and they didn't really believe him. So he said, hand me that drum. And he started to sing a Cree song. He only heard me sing it once.
Oh my goodness sakes!
That's that kind of memory.
Yeah.
So he was greeted as one of them.
Oh.
You never know, what the kids are absorbing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
They
true.
become inheritors of every little thing that we do. And I tell people, I grew up with family violence and alcoholism, and I grew up with that inheritance. So I had to break the cycle. I had to go into therapy, and I had to go into ceremony to heal myself. I had to do it with both Western therapy and Native therapy. I couldn't do it without the other. So it's important to me. So anyway, that's just my story. There's 5 different dialects of Cree. Some of them I understand, and we can, we struggle through, but we get the gist of what the other is saying. Yeah.
Well, I think my daughter, I have two children. My daughter has got gray eyes. Her hair is very light brown. And she's got gray eyes, and she's really fair. My son is the complete opposite. He's really dark, and his hair is just black. And they're brother and sister. But from my lineage, the name Gottfriedson is a Danish name. So my great-grandfather came right from Denmark. And so we see that blood coming through in his great-grandchildren. And my daughter is one of them. And, she really had a hard time when she was growing up because she thought she was so ugly.
Oh.
Because she was so fair and her eyes were gray and her hair was so light. And, it took her a long time to understand. And she's the one, that really took to the language.
Yeah, it's remarkable. That's a beautiful story that you shared. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
But our women are powerful, right?
Yes, they are extremely powerful. And, in my culture, we say that the Noye, Beth, which means the women own the culture. Our job as men is to protect that culture. And so I really see it like with my daughter, the influence that she had from her mom, and we the Sowet'n, like for her language, knowing everything that her mom knows about the land and the worldview, My
Yeah.
daughter is really, really, really amazing with that. My son married outside of our tribe, and he married a woman that was never interested in her culture, although she's native, but she was never interested in her culture, and and I can see the difference in how the kids are viewed. But one of the good things is that the grandchildren come and spend a lot of time with me and the grandmother. So they have that influence. And as I got two of them, two grandsons, especially the two grandsons. Oh my God. One is named Lance and one is Liam. And then the youngest of my grandchildren, he's named Simrao. Simrao. That's his Indian name, but his white man name is Torval, named after my great grandfather. But him, Simrao means the lynx, the bobcat. And when he enters the room, every single time he enters the room, he goes, "Rawr!"
I was going like this.
Yeah. And one day I asked him, McKenna, it's Ila Yanam. I said, why do you come in here growling? He said, because I'm a bobcat. And then he likes to sleep with me, eh? And he's really talkative, and he was laying on my bed. I was trying to make him go to sleep. And this was a few years ago before he went to school, and he was laying beside me, and I said, Simrao, ma'adika, go to sleep. And he hits me. He says, Papa, you should know I never sleep. I told him, close your eyes and go to sleep. He says, Papa, you should know I never go to sleep with my eyes closed. I thought, oh my goodness sakes.
One of the things I did with my daughter when she was growing up, because I had such a bad experience in residential school when I came with womanhood, nobody told me about what to expect every month, about self-respect and all of that stuff. So I didn't have it when I left residential school, no self-respect. I didn't know anything about womanhood, blah, blah, blah. So what I did with her when she was a young girl and she got her first period, I brought her home to the reserve and we recreated a moon ceremony for her. And all the old ladies got together, her best friend got together, and I got her to give away all her children's toys to everybody. And the old ladies braided her hair with sweetgrass and put a cape on her that was over 100 years old, one of those shawls.
Yeah.
And then we had a huge plate of different berries that she was allowed to eat. And the men sat around the circle and watched us women. And each woman gave her a spiritual gift, a teaching of womanhood.
Wow.
She had to give up berries for a whole year, every shape and form, drink, jam, fruit, for a whole year. And she had to pay attention to children. At the end of that ceremony, when I was traveling with my elders in Australia, we brought her back into her body with her the berries and reintroduced, and she felt so uncomfortable taking those berries. But she learned about self-discipline, and she taught us, like we would forget she was on this ceremony for a year. She would tell us, Mom, I can't have that. Dad, I can't drink that. It's berries. And it taught her self-discipline, endurance, and perseverance, and self-respect. When I started to fast and she was 14, I brought her to her first lodge, and she's been fasting now maybe 11 times, and she's now 40. So, we start them young, because like I said, children become our inheritors. So it's important that we show the example,
Mm-hmm.
and we encourage and come and take them in and to do these things.
Yeah.
It was a different story with my son. But what I had him do is when he killed his first deer, he gave away all the meat. I took him around to Saskatoon, and we went knocking on all the elders' doors, and he gave away his first deer. So that was the only thing I could do for him. He's married to a white lady now, and but they're very involved in trying to learn. And so I've been teaching them how to make pemmican, dry meat,
Yeah.
and moose nose, and because I grew up with all that stuff, and I, and they love dry meat. So, yeah.
These are the things that really tell how strong we are. It's testimony. I know right now, I was telling you about my two grandsons. The older one is named Lance. So what we have, the men in my culture never participate in what the women's ceremonies are. When the young women do their echka, it's called the echka, that transition from they leave their child behind and they enter into the young adult world to become a woman.
Yeah.
And it's the same for our boys too. And I went through this myself, and I think these are the things that saved me, because like you know, I was in residential school, but we still had our culture, and we still had, and I was lucky that my uncles, because they're the ones that take us, because they say, oh, your mom and dad's going to just baby you, and your grandparents are going to baby you. So the uncles take us, and, and we have to do our river baths and all of these things, but they took us from very young age. And the same thing that I'm doing with my grandson, Lance. So we get him ready for his what we call the long fast. That's when his voice changes.
Oh, right. Yes.
And so, like every year, at this time of the year, because we're coming up to our new year. Our new year is when the buds and the leaves come out. That's what we,
yeah.
So we take him, and he has to go, and then we send him up the mountain. He has to go up the mountain. He has to run up the mountain. He has to grab something that he found, and then the next day he has to drop it off and bring something back down. He stays with it. And with him, at first it was really hard for him, because my son lives in the city, and because he works in the mine, so he works like these really weird shifts, like 14 or 12-hour shifts, and then he's like 7 days, then 7 days off, like that. So he's not constant in their everyday life. But so my grandson started to get like heavy. But when we started to say, okay, now we got to prepare you for your echka, at first he hated it. He'd lay down on the hillsides and cry, and but we had to wait for him to stop and get up and go again. And now he looks forward to it. He just, part of the training has to run. So he has to run, and he has to run, and he knows it's this time of the year now. And so the other day he phoned me and he says, Papa, he says, look, the snow is all gone down here. When am I going to start? Well, I live high in the mountain. I still have like 2 feet of snow out here. And so I said to him, well, get your dad to go running along the river with you, even when he comes home from work. I said, you can start that way. I said, but up here, I said, you were up here just last week. You've seen we still got like 2 feet of snow. We can't get you to, to run in that. So he said, okay. So I guess he waited a few days for his dad. He was too scared to ask his dad. And then finally, a couple days ago, he said, "Yeah, I made my dad run and he only went a block, Papa. He could only make it a block." He said, I said, "What did you do?" He says, "Oh, I was running along and I was just like going slow because I know my dad, you know, he's not as fast as me. And I was talking and I was," he says, "and then I noticed after a while my dad wasn't talking to me." And he said, "I looked back and he was way back there." So, but
Yeah.
when they go on their Echka too, because he's getting ready to go on his what we call the long fast. That's the first major fast that he will have to do. So we kind of build them up each year from about when they're about 10 years old, maybe even a little younger, like 9. We get them to go on like half day fast, 1 day fast, like that. So his body can, build up and he gets that um, endurance and that focus and that self-discipline to go through his long fast. But he's really looking forward to it. And boy, can that kid sing. He's got a beautiful, beautiful voice. And he's so kind and gentle. I told him, "Oh my God, Lance," I said, "you're going to steal the heart out of every woman in the country." He said, "You think I should?" I didn't expect that answer from him.
Just make sure you wear rubbers.
Yeah.
You probably won't understand rubbers. They're meant for the shoes.
Yeah. Oh my God. But the journey of our people, despite what we've gone through, everything is still alive.
Yeah.
Our songs, our language. And yes, there's not that many people that speak it, but it's still there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 When I was living in Ontario with my husband and he was going to school, I was there for 4 years and almost 4 years, and I didn't have anybody to speak with. And my parents were sort of dispersed, so I didn't have telephone contact with a lot of people to speak the language. And I lost it for that 4 year period. So when I came home and I saw my relatives, first thing I did was cry. I just cried and cried.
Yeah.
And the next thing I did was I took a beginner's Cree class. And it all came back. I could just feel it in my body. And so I just love it when I have that opportunity to speak my language fully. There's an older lady here. She's a good friend of mine, and her husband she's Cree, and he's white, and he speaks fluently.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, he speaks better than me.
Oh my goodness.
They do all my translation work.
Oh.
Yeah, they do all my books. They do, with all of the translation. Yeah.
Oh. We have a couple like that here too. Like, but they're white women that married in, and those two women, they speak better than some of the people in my community. And I mean, they speak really, really, really well. And one of them is a linguist. So she knows she learned how to break apart the whole word.
That's what this guy does.
Oh, yeah. This is what the one lady does here. And so so we got her to teach. There's a group of young people that said, we want to try an immersion course here. A full immersion, no English. And so we started it in the fall. So every other Friday I go down there and then I'll just talk to them. But I only talk for a little while and then, And she's got these young people. And we started in September and we thought, okay, well, we'll see who's going to be there by the end of October. And then if they make it to Christmas, we'll see what happens then. And so there was 20 of them that started. It's now March and all 20 of them are still in that group.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I first went in, they because the sounds in my language are some are very hard to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like, because it comes from here and then it comes from the tip of your tongue, and like it, it is like the deer. That's what we call the deer, eh? And it's like so it's making those sounds. There's so many. They said there's like 78 sounds in my language. That's what that
Wow.
woman identified. And so, and but what she's managed to do with these students, and so she teaches that part of it. So we got her helping with that. But we have like two other fluent speakers. One is a trained teacher, but the other one is a fluent speaker about our age, who's never been in the classroom or anything. But she's like the dictionary. She's like the thesaurus, and
Yeah.
she just sits there. And if they don't know a word, then they'll ask her what the word is, and then she'll give them the word and just sit there and wait again for the next word to come along. But what I was so amazed with was that we started with 20 young people, and we still have 20, and it's a good mix of young men and young women. Usually the men are the ones that hold back. The women are the ones that charge forward with these things, but the young men are still hanging in there. And I was so happy. So I was asking them, well, what are we going to do next? So they said, well, you're always taking your grandchildren out to the mountains. Can you take us out in the mountains in the springtime? So it's a 1-year immersion course.
Mm.
So it's one full year, and they start at 7:30 in the morning, and they have to learn how to cook in that class. They have to learn how to wash dishes. They even brought a washing machine in, one of those old ones that go like that. And so they have to wash clothes. They have to do everything in the language, eh? And they're getting so good at it. And
That's
so,
really wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the first one we've tried in our community. Because in my community, I guess I'm the youngest I can't ever say that I'm fluent, but I'm pretty good at speaking my language, but I'm the youngest out of that age group. Now these are the next group. My children are good speakers. My grandchildren, I would say, are very fluent. But other than that, we have very few speakers. But what excites me about the whole thing is that when people say that we lost our language or we lost this, no, we didn't. It's there. And there's more and more people going back into it. And that I find exciting. It might be only 20, and but next year we're going to have 20 more. And then there's 40 people, if the group stays together. And so, and to us, we've opened it up to anybody that's in the community. Because like any other community, we have different tribal people in our community. We have mixed people. We have white people married into our community. We have a lot of different people. So we opened it up to the community, and it's so much fun. So we have one of my nieces who's learning the language, is married to a black guy, and he's a musician. So the only way that it makes sense to him with our language is he takes the words and he puts it to guitar. And I thought that's a really creative way to do this.
Yeah.
And like with the notes on the guitar, like when he's picking.
Yeah.
Dashin Kuka. He'll just make it up, right? Dashin Kuka means number 9, eh?
Yeah.
But it's really cool.
So how did you get into the writing career then?
Me?
Yeah, how did you evolve?
Oh, gee. I came out of small boys camp. I lived in small
Oh,
boys
right.
camp.
Yes, yes, yes.
And when I was in small boys camp, my firstborn child had died.
Mm.
And so I was like really in a lot of grief. And and that's one of the reasons why I stayed at small boys camp for so long, was because that was where I healed.
Mm-hmm.
Because of it, I couldn't get over it. Like I just couldn't, it took me a long time to get over it. So I lived there for 8 years, and then we decided, we should come back because both of our parents were getting very old, and we wanted to come back and be with. My wife then had lost her dad in the meantime when we were in the mountains, and her mom was getting very, very old, and my mom was getting very old. My parents were too, because there's 13 in my family, and I'm number 11.
Mm.
So I was one of the, younger ones. But my teaching degree, my undergraduate degree, was from the University of Alberta, and in those days, provinces didn't accept a bachelor's degree of education from Alberta to British Columbia. So I went and I worked at the Annalcan Center, and Jeanette Armstrong was there, and she was, creating that creative writing program, and Lee Miracle and Joy Harjo and all of these women were coming into their Ruby Slipperjack and Thomas King and these people. At that time, I knew nothing about Aboriginal writing or First Nations voice or anything like that. But Jeanette used to have poetry readings at her house, and she would invite me there every Friday night, and people would read poetry, what they were writing on, what they were working on. But I didn't write anything at that time. So I just go there and listen. And then she gave me this book one day. She said, "Here, you can't just come in here and listen. You got to participate too." She says, "Did you write anything?" I said, "No, I don't know anything about this. I just, listen." And it was Joy Harjo's book. She had some horses. And so she told me, read this poem. And it was the poem, She Had Some Horses. And I thought, oh my goodness, when I started reading that poem, I thought, oh, this is magic. This combination of words is so beautiful. So I started writing on little scraps of papers, and then I would, because I got a job at the Annalcan Center teaching to the adults, because I couldn't teach in public school or elementary school. So they hired me to teach English and First Nations, or what did they call it? First Nations studies, and that's how I got into writing. So they collected them all, and they typed them all out, and then they sent them off to Naropa, and that's how I started writing. And for a long time, I wouldn't say that what I wrote was poetry or anything, because I didn't understand the writing world.
Mm-hmm.
I just said, "Oh, these are my thoughts. That's all they are."
Mm.
And how about you, Kista?
Well, when you were in small boys camp, I was in the mountains at the Mackinac camp, and that's where the prophetic dreams began, of not only ceremony but the writing. And I think I might have mentioned it. My grandfather used to read syllabics.
Oh yeah.
In the dreams he was showing me, I had lots of dreams prophesizing my writing life. And so when I was living in northern Saskatchewan, I would escape into the woods and like keeping a journal. And I found my writing so boring. It was so horrible. Like I would say, "Oh, it's a nice day out," and "Oh, I'm feeling rotten." Non-descriptive words. And I would go back and look at this, and I'd say, well, what made it a nice day? And what was so rotten about that day? I don't even remember. So I thought, okay, my writing is telling me I need to be more clearer. And so I started to write again, and I didn't grow up with reading and writing a lot, you know, so it was a real exploration about how to write. And so I started to write with much more information, you know, like it's storming out today. That's easy to say, but what makes this storm so unique, you know? Why was I feeling so rotten? Like I was thinking today I had a really bad doldrum day where I felt really low, and so I could say that, but it doesn't really tell you anything. So I had to learn how to be descriptive. That's how it all began, was by keeping that journal. And of course, at the time, Writing the Circle was produced, right? Native woman of Western Canada. So that's how it all began.
Wow. Do you remember some of your first words or your first?
No.
No?
No, I don't.
No? Do you still have your journals, or are they gone?
No. I went through a process of burning everything. And I regret it to this day because, you know, at the time I didn't feel comfortable. I thought somebody would read my journals. You know, my husband of 48 years, my kids have never read my journals. I can leave them all over the place in the house and nobody touches them. And that's safety and respect. But when I was growing up and when I was a teenager writing poetry, and I didn't know it was poetry back then, even my letters, my father would, you know, invade my privacy. And so I quit, you know, because it wasn't a safe place to express myself. And so it took me a long time to get back into it. Yeah. Anyway, how's our time?
Well, we got about 40 minutes. Is there a little piece or a little poem that you guys like to share? Maybe while you're doing that, I'll play that little clip that Rhonda shared with me, and it kind of gives you a little sense of, you know, that idea of us all being around the table together, listening to stories, eating our bannock and berries, and drinking our Nadimastic tea, and, you know, those kind of things. And yeah. So, while you guys find a little piece or think of a poem or something, I'll play this one that Rhonda shared. Okay. So it's an audio clip. Thank you, Kathy, for doing, where is it? Here.
Kathy, the audio is not coming through.
Do you want me to stop it?
Yeah, it's not playing.
We can't hear anything.
Is this something I can do? Maybe here.
We make women. At this table we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers.
No.
Our dreams drink coffee.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, that time we could hear it. You just need to run it back to the beginning.
Okay.
But yes, we could hear it now.
There's a funky little box I had to.
Perhaps the world ends here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teeth at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
That is beautiful.
Is it ever beautiful? My
Oh
goodness
my
sake.
gosh.
Yeah, it encompasses that whole table, right? You know, what we do at the table, and yeah, it's just beautiful. So I don't know who's prepared. Louise, you want to go first, and then Gary, and then we can open it up for questions and answers, and I can do some final thank yous and those kind of things.
Oh, here. Okay. It's called, I can't think of it off. I wrote it in Cree, but I can't read my Cree. So it's just simply called jealousy. Because one of the things I experienced while growing up and in residential school was I had really low self-esteem. So when I got into the relationship, I never had a long-term relationship with anybody. Lots of one-night stands, you know, bad girl syndrome. But my husband has been my only long-term relationship ever. So I had to learn about letting go of jealousy because I was insecure. I had low self-confidence. I was a nobody, so to speak, because that's the way I saw myself. So I thought, okay, I also learned about jealousy through my parents' relationship, okay, because we learn what we see. And so this is about jealousy then. When he first took me to his home, it was clear I was from the wrong side of the creek. A blonde arrived at his door 4 nights after my brother took his last breath, and my newborn and I had flown home to be at my brother's wake. When he went to university, he spoke another upon his lips, a milk-skinned woman who had the language he understood while my tongue tripped on the accent of my Cree. For years, I raged when I saw him in the company of other women, business-suited women striding in high heels, while I stayed home, my high school transcripts hidden and babies attached to my breasts. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. In my language, we have a word for jealousy between partners, and it's a different type of jealousy from other types of relationships, but that, and we call that num, when there's that jealousy and within the relationship. That's a beautiful piece, and that's really so true of how we even a man would experience, not the motherhood part of it or anything, but certainly your own self-deception, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you compare yourself to others, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm going to read a poem called Men Like Me, and this is the title of my, it was supposed to be the title, it was the original title of my new book coming out. Since then, the title has changed, but I wanted it to be this title called Men Like Me. And it's a little bit longer than your poem, so I hope you will bear with me, everyone.
That's okay.
My body speaks of men like me, compressed and contained, conditioned by stereotypes, shaped by white privilege, chosen to be someone's trashy love story, still carting a stoic Indian inside, kicking up dust on res roads, loving the scent of the earth after it rains, or strutting our stuff along Robson Street, Vancouver's Banana Republic district, forever straddling two worlds. Still, we are handsome savages, fulfilling fantasies hidden from the moon's beam, shining bear-like eyes, still knowing we are not elite enough to sit center stage in the Blue Water Cafe on Hamilton Street in the light of day. We all know our ranks in society. Indian pride is knowing we love ourselves enough to stand ground despite ignorance, but knowing we are never noble enough to sport our images on center stage, definitely not on the Queen's currency, no matter how much we have contributed to this country and to the world. Instead, we have become what others have forced us to be, locked into public policy and pleasure, dangerously drifting from the red earth, hardly in touch with Granny's soft skin, becoming deaf to Grandpa's stories, sometimes barely remembering we were born with bruises and blood, we were born naked, that we were born brown and that our parents walked hunched over along a similar path a generation before us, weighed down with the Queen's victory, the woman who never knew her own children, who had no hand in raising them. But we never forget the lessons our ancestors taught us, our words inked in our bones, our own backs bent heavy, our iron hearts breaking gracefully. 7 generations at a time, notwithstanding this, we give meaning to something more than ourselves. Yet the weight of our travels stretches our limbs, carves ruts in our faces that tell it all. Our spines carry ghosts protruding from our skins, and there are graveyards caving in on our throats. Still, feeble throaty songs reach beyond us. Our growls are that of our ancestors, mumbling English atrocities, fighting the savages who stripped us of our mother tongues, the swelling tongues of foreigners, calculating our future with precision. We fumble to explain this when we look into the eyes of our children, hiding shame and forever at war. Yet we love this land until our bodies rot, bearing it in our children's hearts. True, we have been beaten down and bent into something beautiful, our voices rumbling thunder from graves, but we can still taste rain streaming from our souls. So strong is our will to live. We are alive, and we speak for men like me.
Oh, that's so truthful. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so beautiful, Gary and Louise. Like, that's and the same with the clip, right? It talks about, you know, how the stories are poetry, are poetic, songs are, our culture is, right?
Mhm.
You know, what we put out there, we get back, more
Yeah.
so, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's just beautiful.
I think that's the magic of our souls. That's
Yeah,
what our
it
voices
is.
are, is the
Yeah,
magic of our souls.
it
And
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And when you speak from that place, how can you lie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You speak from truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it scares people.
Oh, it definitely scares people. I remember a young man when he listened to Bare Bones and Feathers, he said, "Oh, I could write that." So
Mm,
easy, he said. And I thought, well, go for it and see how easy it is to tell your truth.
exactly.
Yeah.
And to be able to do it in a way where, you know, you're bringing in so many layers through
Yeah.
even one word,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Like I've read your work, and I remember the first time we met each other, Louise, was at the Vancouver Writers Festival many, many years ago, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, this woman is amazing." You know, like I didn't even want to read my work. I was so spellbound by your poetry, and I was just sitting there, and we were on a panel with Richard Van Camp and Richard Wagamies, and then there was Louise and I. Louise was the only woman on this panel. And when she started to read, I was like, and then pretty soon, like, you know, I can't even remember what poem you read, but then I, I was, a tear came down, and Richard Van Camp was sitting beside me, and he gave me a Kleenex actually. And then I didn't want to read. I was sitting there like, oh my God. But the power of words and the beauty when it's in language, and when
Yeah.
and English is a playful language like our languages are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I love your work.
Thank you.
I've always loved your work. When I need inspiration to write, I go back and I read other poets.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. And yours is one of them.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Did you ever submit to the parliamentary library?
Yes, I did.
Oh, did they respond?
No, they never did respond.
Follow up on that and find out what's
Okay.
going on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do that. But
Yeah.
I did submit to them, and I never heard back from anybody. They said that they didn't get it, and so I resent all of the files again. Yeah.
I'll ask them too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Our library here hasn't been doing anything. So anything that was in our library is now just, they're just starting. So some of the stuff that they're pulling in is from 2020, right? Since COVID, you know, so they're unburying old things and trying to bring them in. So, let's see, Marianne, Lori, or Sue, does any of you guys have any questions for our guest speakers, comments, anything you'd like to say? You can put it in the chat if you like, and I can read it out to them and they could answer, or unless you want to come on camera and ask Joan, sweet Joan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there.
Yeah. I was listening very, very intently to both of you, and I'm a little bit older than you guys, and but I've been all your thoughts and your memory. I feel that I have those same things, and all my life, I don't know why, but people thought that I should be writing. But I do write notes, but I don't write I did write poetry, and I did write few things, but they were basically just things that I wanted to write and nothing to actually publish. But you know, I was drawn to tears because some of this stuff is so. A person my age tend to think, well, I've forgotten all about those things, because my upbringing, even though I'm First Nations, I'm from the Saigas First Nations, and my grandmother comes from there, and we are matriarchal as well. And so all my life I heard her dialect and Saigas dialect from southwest of Vanderhoof, there west of Prince George, and she always spoke to us in her dialect. But you know, to this day, I can't dialogue her dialect. I can understand it, and I can read and write and do those kind of things with the language. Probably because I felt like deep inside, I don't know why I need to speak the language, but anyway, and then other things going on, and it's totally amazing how I'm so glad that you're able to write, you know, share those words, because there's still a lot of us that need to hear that people our age can now openly speak their mind and say it in their books and say it in their poetry. I really give thanks to the both of you for your work today. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. You know those little notes that you write, and those little tiny things that you're put them all together. Put them all together and paste them in a book. Okay, paste them in a book and send it to Gary or me, and we can help you put it together.
Oh, I got three or four of them. Actually, I got more, and
books
I kept all my favorites. So
books that you pasted, or
well, you know those notebooks, stenotype books, notebooks like that. You know, they're not big, and so I go through them every now and then. And I did the same thing you did when I was growing up. I destroyed all my. I did diary every month or every year actually, but I destroyed all those because when I was married, the husband would probably read through them, and I was so private, I didn't allow anyone to read through what I wrote. But today, you know, I'm more, I guess, educated about what I write, because a lot of things interest me and a lot of things don't. But mostly, I do write out of interest. Everything I do, and yeah, I quite enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I remember one writer saying, I used to just write 10 sentences a day, and that's how my book got published, she said.
Right.
And that you just start out small and see what happens, and you share only what you're comfortable with.
Right.
You know, because sometimes when you're writing, you're opening up big wounds that haven't healed. And it's really painful to go there. And I wouldn't share that with anybody if you're still feeling like it's going to hurt you more.
Right. Well, I'm becoming more open about it, or at least I'm dealing with the whys and wherefores. So, but sometimes, every time you think, oh, I think I've dropped that now, but it doesn't take very much for it to surface, and I'm so surprised that it still sits there, probably things that need to be addressed, at least in my own mind, right? And I'm one of those, I don't go to therapy or anything. I do self stuff. do self-help, but I learn from others as well, from the many books that I've ever read. And lately I've been going to Canadian work, but because I always find that their work is the same as what I'm doing. I mean, the same, we have this, just like your work, it's all along the same lines of the stuff that we grew up with. And I think it's a way to try to probably to release those.
I
A way
think
to
too,
release it from your mind.
I like what you said about the therapy part, because I think when I was writing things down, it was my therapist, because there are things that I've written that sometimes I didn't have the confidence or a way to say it to another person, but I could, but when I wrote it down, I could write it like in a way where I could express what was going on inside of me.
Right.
Things that I couldn't openly say, I think, to another human being, I put it into poetry. And my first books were very angry books.
Right.
They were extremely angry books, and I look back at it and I think, oh my God, why would a publisher even put those out there?
Right.
Because I was so angry against the church and what I witnessed in the residential school, and I couldn't tell my wife these things. I couldn't tell my brothers or sisters. I couldn't tell the people who were closest to me. So the way I did it was I put it into poems.
Right.
And Louise was asking earlier, like, how did I get started writing? That's how I started to write. As
Right.
there was things going on inside of me that I didn't even understand at the time. So I started to write with them, and I started to play with words.
Right.
And then when I was writing, I thought, I don't want to be, this is too obvious, and it's gonna, people, if somebody read this, that's what I would think. Oh, if somebody read this, they would think, oh, you're crazy or something. So I started to play with words, and I started to write that way. And I really love what Louise said there. We are here. I don't think there's a writer, especially Indigenous writer across the land, that wouldn't help and assist those that want to share their work.
Right.
And so if you want to send them to me, and like Louise offered
Right.
her skills and her time to read, if you want to do that, do it, because I think that the more we speak about things, then the faster we heal in our nations. And we are really vulnerable. We're very vulnerable as writers and as poets, because we are talking about things that other people wouldn't dare talk about.
Right.
And we talk about things that people sometimes want to say, but are too afraid to say.
Yeah.
And I think there's lots of us out there that write from that way, and we've learned little tricks along the way to help sharpen our voices and things.
Right.
But my first books of poetry were very angry. I didn't hold back on anything, but if I didn't let it out, I think I would have been a drunk. I would have been an abuser. I would have been maybe into addictions of other kinds. Who knows?
That's right.
So, yeah.
There's a couple things I want to mention about writing. And anger actually is a good thing, because it fuels you it motivates you to do something about that inner stuff, if it's dealt with respect.
Mm-hmm.
Like anger, like you said, it can turn inward and you become self-destructive, which I was when I was younger.
Yeah.
And So it's not a bad thing to be angry. I'm driven a lot by the racism, and I'm just angry about it right now. So I try to write about it in so that it's not in your face stuff, but I share the story. So when you're writing, don't think audience. Like, who's going to read my stuff? Don't think that, because what happens with that is you're doing censorship already, because you're trying to please your audience. You cannot think about that.
That's so
And of course,
true.
yeah, and of course, what we're doing is breaking the silence and breaking the taboos, which Gary just mentioned. And so when you're writing a journal, essentially what we're doing is vomiting on page. Okay, so it's cathartic, and what it does is it shows you the patterns of behavior, and then you figure out, okay, this is my pattern of behavior. How do I change it? And so what the vomit, this compost is, a little seed comes up, a little seed of beauty. That's where you know that you've hit the poetry. Okay. But first we need to sort through our vomit and take it out of our guts.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we figure out, how do I show this without telling them what to feel and what to think? Okay.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of story sharing, is the elders, when I listen to them, they're sharing a story. They're not telling me what to do. They're bringing me into the story to help me figure out, what do I need from this story to help me move on? Yeah. So that's just what I wanted to say. Yeah.
That's so true. That's absolutely so true. And I mean, like this poem that I just wrote, it is about anger. It is about racism and discrimination, and about how we internalize it. But I tried to write it in a way where it wasn't ugly either. You know?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that. Yep, that's so on target, Louise, for sure.
Yeah. I'm really proud of you, Joan, that you're here and that you're writing. And I really encourage you to keep on writing and keep those journals. And that's how my writing career began too, is by reading and questioning. That author said this, do I really believe it? And how will it work for me? You know, so yeah, I'm grateful that you're here, and thank you for.
Thank you.
So Sue writes, thanks Gary and Louise and the organizers. I come from Saskatchewan and really understand the land there and in BC. I love the land and the people here as well. I wrote poetry at one time, maybe might try again. So that's our elder, another elder here from Prince George.
Good.
Lori, or well, there's two Loris. One's O-L-O and one's L-A-U. So you don't have anything. I would like to thank Gary and Noye Louise, our Atsu Joan, our Atsu Sue, Lori Atsu. These are all elders, and I'd like you for attending. And I would also like to extend great gratitude and just love this poetry and the songs and the stories and everything that you've been sharing. But I'd also like to send a big hands up and thank you to all our sponsors and our partners for helping us make this festival possible. We have received financial support as well as organizing and community support from Social Science and Humanities Research Council, the University of Northern British Columbia, the English Department, the First Nations Studies Department, and Health Arts Research, School District 57, Prince George Public Library, the Prince George Native Friendship Center, Two Rivers Gallery, and Carney Hill Neighborhood Center. So that is where we're at. If you have any closing remarks, Gary or Louise? Go
ahead, Louise.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being with you, Gary, and everybody who's organized and put this together. I'm so honored, and I'm delighted to be here sharing. Hi. Kanasup na agakyo.
Etlan Jawa, Cookscham, Cookschechel, White the Sweat, and we, Louise, Akin Osman as Kwakaluten Koch. So I'm very happy, so happy in my heart that I got to speak with you today and with the rest of the people. I thank all of you, and it was a beautiful, beautiful way to spend the afternoon. And Louise, I hope I get to spend some time with you when I come out in the summertime to Saskatoon. And,
well, I want to climb your mountain.
Well, you can come here anytime you want. You and your husband will go up the mountains. I'll take you out. We'll go get medicines. We'll get berries, whatever you want.
Okay, sounds good.
Anytime.
Okay.
Yeah. And so good to see everybody out there. Yeah. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank you, our guests and the audience. Thank you for attending this event. I encourage you to check out the festival sampler closing ceremony tomorrow afternoon. There's also an Elders in the Future workshop at the Friendship Center from 11 till 2. There was still seats earlier this morning, still available for in-person, a nice salmon Bannock dinner. But there is all the details are on the Facebook page and also on the website weavingwords.org. So thank you. Nanustensi, Zinhunzu, Suhuanle. So take care. Have a wonderful day. And thank you. Nature.